just go around the room? Where's everybody based out of?
I'm in New York today in our office, in our building.
Nice.
I'm also in New York and Long Island, actually.
Hey, I'm in Long Island, New York also.
Oh, meet you in the house.
Michael, how about you?
I am currently in Miami.
Oh,
Don't
everybody's
be
on the
jealous.
East Coast.
I'm always scared to say that to people because I get kicked off of panels all the time because of jealousy. But I'm in Miami. But I'm based in here in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I kind of travel back and forth.
Very nice. Cool. And then Ivan and myself, we're both in California, and yeah, I guess everybody's everywhere nowadays being virtual. So it's nice. Ivan, should we get started? Should we wait a couple of minutes for the guests to trickle in?
The guests are coming in. I think we should get started. You can start the intro, and excited to introduce everyone, and let's have our mastermind.
Sounds good. So thank you and welcome everybody to our Crowdcreate Mastermind. Really, the purpose of this mastermind is to bring together the community to help each other and leverage what we call the wisdom of the crowds. You've been invited because you're a thought leader in your space, and you've done successfully well, and you're working on something truly exciting. So the format of these masterminds is really to bring attention to your work, build some awesome connections here, and give value to others. These are typically an hour long. We all go around the room, share for about 2 minutes. The three things that we really want you to touch on are who are you? What are you currently working on? What are you most excited about in your industry? And then third, is there anything that the community can help you with? And so, Ivan, if you'd like to kick it off and do an example.
My name is Ivan Khan. I'm one of the co-founders at Crowdcreate. What do? We actually host these masterminds where we connect people with thought leaders and try to get that discussion on the founder side, because who is really seeing the industry from the inside first? It's the people on these panels. They know the inside scoops, and we wanted to share that with the community. What am I most excited about 2021? Personally, for me, it's the vaccine. I'm actually pretty excited for things to try to get as close to normal as possible, although I know we may never get back to what it used to be. But, just to, put positivity on everybody's mind. How can the community help us? We love to connect with more and more founders like yourselves, thought leaders, people on the cutting edge, because, hey, it's the wisdom of the crowds, and there's so much misinformation out there. We just want the experts who are living and breathing those, industries to share their knowledge with the world. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. And yeah, maybe to kick it off, John, would love to hear from you, from successful entrepreneur that's made it on the other side of the table, and since sold your company to private equity. But yeah, would love to hear from you.
My name is John DeWees. I'm based in New York. We're based in our building downtown in Tribeca. We have our own companies here, which we nurture into hopefully exit. And I found myself really focusing on building teams and connecting worldwide. I have a number of interests that I've pursued. Right now, I'm on the track as a well-established company right now. We're doing very well because of the infection control component that it brings. It's a full 100% circular manufacturing material product company, and we're very proud of that. We just recently got Geisinger, which has about 3 or 4% of acute care beds in the United States, full renovations. We're in the midst of something pretty big with them. And we've been very helpful, I think, we've never taken a day off during COVID because our product is involved in emergency rooms. But really, I'm here today more to talk about one of our latest projects, and Dave Kunz is also familiar with what we do. We've started working with Crowdcreate to help us build out our platform called Cyberus Health, which is based on a proven technology that we have a number of opportunities working currently in Europe, bringing here to the US. This focus is on getting us all back to work by irrefutable testing for irrefutable passport, healthcare passport. So people who have had who've been vaccinated or have been recently tested can go into safe spaces. And we have something that's beautiful and that it's scalable. It's super accurate. It's a proven technology, and love everybody's input on connecting with people and seeing if there's some opportunities that we could share. And Ivan and Jeff have been great in helping us work out our go-to-market strategies. And this is really our first time doing a crowdfunding on this side for us to actually raise funds. I know from the other side, but from this side, it's a little bit different. Excited to work with the team.
Awesome. John, is there anything that we can help with? And I know there's a lot of successful crowdfunding founders here in terms of growth, I don't know, investor acquisition, any insights? You've been a mentor to us.
I think that what we're actually now starting to look for is talent. Operators, as we scale our program, our opportunity creates the ability for individuals to go anywhere in the world, even during COVID, with our testing methodology and proof of safe space. And we are looking for operators who know how to scale business.
Very nice. Cool. Any comments or questions from any of the panelists for John?
Yeah, I think John's being very, very humble as he knows. And as someone who has worked with John on not only this project but a number of others, it's pretty incredible what they've been able to put together. The reality is this is a cybersecurity infrastructure that has been created to put the power in the hands of the individual. So I think there's lots of product out there that is tracking or monitoring what individuals are doing. And this is an agnostic platform. And what that means is what John has created has the ability to work with any solution, whether it's a testing solution, whether it's a particular protocol for a building, a company, and they can incorporate from any level those particular protocol to their mission control center. Basically the best way to think about it. And that mission control can help ensure the health and safety of all of us with an anonymized protocol that can ensure the fact that not only the people and the spaces that you're interacting with are meeting that level of compliance, but is ensuring the fact that you start the day healthy and you end the day healthy too. And I think that's really what's missing in a lot of the solutions out there within the marketplace is there's nothing that has been able to tie everything together and make people feel comfortable and confident without having to give up their personal information. This is a completely anonymous system that works with your smartphone, and your smartphone will be able to identify you, will be able to identify the other person, and there's an exchange that happens, and that's really the engine behind all of this. But it's very, very smart technology. It's GDPR compliant. It's HIPAA compliant. And so getting through those hurdles, that's why I was saying John is, he's humble. The fact that they've gotten as far as they've gotten with all of the privacy protocols is pretty amazing. So I'm obviously biased, but I thought I'd have to put my plug in there for everything that he's done.
Well, thanks, Dave. And
Thank you.
yeah, so we have a good mix of people here across clean energy, tech, and Michael, we'd love to hear from you. You had a very successful Startengine campaign. We've been following you for a long time. Love what you're doing with the e-bikes, and yeah, love for you to go next.
Yeah. So yeah, let me introduce myself a little bit, expand on the previous introduction. So as far as I know, GeoOrbital, my company, my startup, is the first to raise over $1 million in rewards crowdfunding. So we raised 1.26 million on Kickstarter, and we actually raised around 1.5 million on Startengine. So we had one campaign that maxed out, and then we had another one that we shut down in the middle because there was some offline investor stuff that was going to come in and it didn't, and that's a whole different story. But anyway, so we've actually had multiple successful crowdfunding campaigns that are over $1 million. But outside of GeoOrbital, I also work a lot with other campaigns and try to get them to that level of funding. I also am on the board of the MIT Enterprise Forum, which is one of the divisions of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology that helps companies scale up, get funding and things like that. So I'm also wrote a book on the topic. It's called the Evergreen Startup. I'm going to have to plug it. I hope you guys all get it. Talks about equity crowdfunding, and specifically, I dive into a lot of really complicated issues of what happens when you do equity crowdfunding and you mix it with VC or angel funding, because that gets a really, really tricky situation you have to navigate. So I dive into that because I've been in that position a bunch of times. So anyway, hope you guys all get the book. I like it. So I think it's one of the authoritative books in the space. But you know, before we dive in, I kind of want to, I know there's a few panelists kind of in the crowd, and I just want to maybe give an introduction from a slightly different perspective about what equity crowdfunding is. Can I get like 5 minutes to give you my philosophical take on it? Is that cool, y'all?
Ask the panelists if it will be of value. Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. All right. So I'm gonna speed this up. The other panelists here, I'm sure you guys have heard things like this before, but I got slightly different take, especially for the audience. So if you guys, I'm gonna take us back to 1920. So in the 1920s, the United States Senate, it's going to be fast, I promise. In the 1920s, Congress of the United States, the Senate and the House, they got together and they said, we have to protect investors from companies. So we can't let privately traded companies sell stock to just anybody because there's a lot of shysters out there. There's a lot of liars out there. Grandmas are losing their house. It's tricky. There's a lot of fraud. So they came up with this rule that's been amended a few times, but this rule of being an accredited investor. And I'm sure you guys have all heard the term. Basically, an accredited investor is somebody who is a millionaire, somebody who has a net worth of over $1 million. There's some more specific granular details, but we'll just call them millionaires for all practical purposes. That's what they are. And that rule is still in effect now. So the only person that can invest in startups outside of equity crowdfunding, which I'll get to in a second, is a millionaire. Now, in 2008, if you guys remember, I'm going to skip a little bit. There was a big stock market crash. I'm sure everybody remembers that. I was actually working on Wall Street in credit derivatives trading. It was one of my team helped crash the world economy. I can't take all the credit. It was a team effort. But what happened after 2008 was a paradigm shifting thing. Companies stopped, investors stopped investing, lenders stopped lending, and there was no access to capital for anybody. So the Obama administration said, we got to reform this, right? The accredited investor model isn't working. We have to reform it. And one of the key reasons that it wasn't working is because if you look demographically at who the millionaires are in this country, they're in their 60s and they're white males. So any company that is not run, that is not attractive to a 60-something-year-old white male became crazy underfunded. And you can actually see this in VC investment statistics now. Did you guys know that under 1% of VC-backed founders are Black or Latino? Today. This isn't 1950, this is today. Under 2% are run by female founders. So that industry is still extremely biased toward white males, older white males, because those are what are called the LPs, the investors in the VC fund. Anyway, different story. So I'm going to go back to 2008. In 2008, the Obama administration said, screw this isn't working, we got to reform it. And the reform that they came up with is called equity crowdfunding. Equity crowdfunding is a mechanism to let regular people invest just like regular people vote. So they allowed regular people to vote for the success of companies, like regular people vote for our government for the success of the entire economy. And that is why I think the equity crowdfunding space, and by the way, COVID also introduced a whole new set of reforms that also affects equity crowdfunding quite a bit, which I'm not going to get into too much. But the idea, the paradigm shifting idea of letting regular people invest is a groundbreaking thing. And I think all of us here on this panel, all of us have been participants in the space. We are revolutionaries. And I'm not stroking our egos here. I actually think that in the last 3, 4, 5 years since Reg CF equity crowdfunding has been around, there has been a paradigm shifting event that's happened. And now regular people can vote with their dollars for the success of companies. And we have never seen that in the United States before. Other countries have actually been better about this, but the United States has a very old legacy of not letting regular people invest in privately traded companies. So I just want to be very clear. Since equity crowdfunding has been around, the companies that have been successful with raising with equity crowdfunding have been 30% run by female or minority founders. 30%. That blows venture capital out of the water.
Wow.
I think we're in one of the most revolutionary spaces there is, especially in the startup ecosystem. So I'm not plugging my company. I'm not talking about anything. I just want to introduce how important this topic really is. And since I've been doing it over the last 4 years, I think people are becoming aware. I think venture capital has frozen, especially in the early stage. I think angels have also migrated to investing through equity crowdfunding. So this is a hotly growing space, and I hope that everybody in the audience and everybody's in the panel is excited about this, because this is groundbreaking. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let somebody else take the helm.
Michael, we love your passion. Just 2 days ago, we had a blockchain and crypto mastermind just like this, and it was like that same level of revolution, bringing the access to banking, to financing, to wherever you were born, whether in your impoverished countries around the world. And I've had this conversation with John DeWees before, and John would love to actually share what you do at your accelerator and you empowering these entrepreneurs. I love it, Michael. That's literally what makes us wake up. And our vision and our mission statement here at CrowdCreate is to empower those individuals to, leverage these new tools.
That was great.
Yeah. John, I know that you've invested in quite a bit of startup founders that have that same passion. Do you want to highlight some of them, or?
Let me see if I can get my sound back on. Can you hear me?
Yep, you can hear.
Yep,
Yeah, you
it
can hear me.
sounds
Okay.
good.
All right, good. All right. So we started. I've been an entrepreneur since 1981. So this is my 40th year doing this. In the interim, I think I've started probably close to 8 or 9 companies. And then when my partner and I came to Tribeca 25 years ago, we bought a little building to put our own work in. But we've now since expanded to have things that we share and other companies coming in here, and we have a lot of startups in the building. And I've pursued kind of a past 4 years, a lot of angel investing, especially to women and minority founders. And I love coaching, I love mentoring, I love investing with opportunities that just don't show up for other people, they show up for me. As a component of a spiritual, practical, financial, change the world kind of point of view. Right now, I think I have about 10 angel investments. Most of them deal with women minority founders. I have to say, they also deal with the smallest minority, which is the individual, and the respect that we need to provide individuals instead of being whipsawed by the big guys, little guys making their stake and claim into the world. So we have healthcare, we have consumer products. In our team, we have green manufacturing, demand planning manufacturing, and it just goes on and on. I have founders who are about literacy, just many founders and different kinds of things. I love to talk about minority and women founders and the kinds of things that they need to help be successful. We've gone after Walmart and kind of help them understand better what it means to support communities that are underserved in a financial way with regards to startups and minority founders. And we've made some progress there, which is pretty exciting. One of my portfolio companies is a Black woman who's created the first patented board game. And we got that into Walmart and Target now, and she has a nice little growing business. So I love to talk, like Michael, I love talking about the opportunities that exist and how we can, as individuals, we can make a difference in the world.
That's awesome. Maybe that's a good segue. Daniel, you're working on a clean energy project. I'd love to hear from you.
So I'd like to share some of my energy with you. I think crowdfunding is great. and I've had 2 full rounds of CF1 as a regular crowdfunding. And we just are in the middle of our latest one, which is Reg A. We just opened a week ago. And I hope you'll all invest in it, of course. But the point is that I think that we really owe our success to crowdfunding. There may be some correct things about what Michael just said about women, minorities. I don't necessarily divide the world into those kinds of categories. There's so many other categories. If you're in hardware, or if you're something that has a long-term appeal, you know, I've gone to so many venture capitalists and others, and they say, Dr. Farb, we just love what you're doing. It's so important for the world, but it's not our area. And then they go and invest in something like getting all the pit bulls in one city on an app and selling it to Facebook within a year. That's the kind of thing. I'm exaggerating. I'm just trying to make it funny. But the point is that if you don't fit some of the traditional categories, no matter what your race, gender, anything like that, you're kind of isolated from the main sources of capital. And what crowdfunding does is for all of these different categories, it opens up capital to people who believe in what you're doing. The other thing that I found missing from a lot of venture capital nowadays is that they will invest in marginal improvements, but they won't invest in, let's say, disruptive improvements most of the time, because it's too risky for them. They want low risk. So this enables you to reach out to many different people who are interested in what you're doing. Now, what I'm doing is disruptive. We have a different way of looking at wind turbines. Every expert consultant you will talk to, and probably some of the venture capital firms turn to them, will tell you you can't put wind turbines close to each other because they degrade each other's performance. Well, we have a granted patent on how our type of turbine can be put close to each other and make each other perform better. So what we did is go in many ways against the grain. And crowdfunding gives us a chance to make our case, as with so many other interesting crowdfunded companies. I see many companies look very interesting to me that are also on Startengine. I think there's a lot of potential, and it both empowers the small guy who otherwise can't go into Wall Street and get the deals that are reserved for their friends for $1 million, like Uber. You need a few $100 million to get into something like that. But you can get in at an early stage, and it's that early stage, if you get it right, where you can really make big money. And it gives the small guy a chance to make big money. And it gives people like me who have a disruptive idea the chance to find the people who want to take a chance with us. And I really, have appreciated the people who've joined us. A lot of venture capitalists will tell you, well, this isn't such a great idea. You have so many people in your cap table, blah, 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 blah. However, I very much enjoyed, in general, the people that have signed on to us from crowdfunding. I had a discussion with one this morning. Some of the people really help you, help to move your company forward. And some of them are like what I call, I was joking before, it's like a fan club. We're in wind turbines, so kind of a fan. But some of them are people who every month or two send me an email encouraging me or pointing out different ideas they have. And I happen to like it. Now, I think if all 3,000, 4,000 of them were to send me emails every month, I don't think I could handle it and still have time to work on the company. But I like the fact that that kind of access, that kind of sharing of thoughts is available. And so I very much like the process of crowdfunding. It's made a very big difference for us. I could say there could be some improvements made. I think that unfortunately, everything that happens, the government feels that they have to control it in some way, because if it's not controlled, it'll go on its own in some way. So I'd say we wasted maybe $50,000 this year just on excessive government regulations about crowdfunding. We had our financials done for the year 2019 in preparation for crowdfunding. And then the SEC told us we had to have an audit that covered the same time period. On top of that, because it wasn't good enough to just have the financials, we had to have an audit. So they covered exactly the same time period. The first one asked for 100 invoices. The second one asked for 100 invoices. What did they add except suck capital out of us? So on the one hand, I think many people don't realize how good the protections are for people doing crowdfunding. It's really good. People think, oh, somebody could come and say anything they want. You can't. I've been asked for the same kind of proof of statements that I make from my lawyer, from the two accountants we had to, have do the audits and financials, plus the Startengine compliance team. So you put it together, I think we've been more examined than some of the companies that go public on Wall Street or elsewhere, or certainly with venture capital. So I think people don't appreciate the amount of safety that you have, maybe not a safety in terms of whether your investment is going to succeed or not, but the kind of safety that everything has been looked at very intensely when you first come to those pages that you see. All this background work really makes it a very, in a sense, established kind of fundraising mechanism. So that's what I like about it, and I intend to keep using it. And I'll say the other thing is that one of the things I like is that we get this input from the investors, but we're not beholden to any single one that's going to tell me how to run the company, wants to be on the board, has an ego involved, has his own set of priorities, which may mean that his fund is closing and he has to sell out quickly. We can make the best decisions for the future of the company and for the investors' money in a way that I don't think we could if we were venture capital funded. I think I've talked enough.
That's great, Daniel. Michael, would you like to?
I just wanted to add, Daniel, I really enjoyed what you were saying. I just wanted to add a little bit to it. I completely agree with your take on venture capitalists. And I would also like to add, so that everybody understands, that venture capitalists are not good at their job, objectively speaking. Statistically, less than 7% of VC funds provide any return to their investors. So they are extremely risk averse. You're absolutely right. And in the days of COVID, early stage venture capital investment, as in a couple of $1 million, that kind of stage, doesn't really exist anymore. They're sitting on what they would call dry powder, but it's all going into much later stage companies. So yes, they're very risk averse. And they're not very good at their job. And the funds that do provide a return are generally, I would call them accidental returns. They'll invest into Uber, or they'll invest into Facebook, and they have 2,000x return from that. So yeah, they're not, and a lot of that is the biases, the industry sector biases, demographic biases, geographic biases, all that kind of stuff. And I also wanted to add about the regulatory burden that you were talking about. Yes, there's definitely a burden, but you were doing an A+, which is a much larger, much higher regulated raise.
We also did 2 Cs before.
Yeah, but the first C, you don't even need audited financials. You need reviewed financials. So the first Reg CF, you can get away for 10 grand. And even under, I mean, there's actually an industry right now being set up to automate all those filings. And as you know, when you're doing the Reg CF, the SEC doesn't actually review or approve anything. You just kind of file stuff. With the A+, yeah, it's a burden, but it's kind of like going public, right? I mean, you're raising millions, like 50 million, right? something like that. So
Good,
yeah,
you
well, the
could.
Reg CF burden is much lower. So if anybody here is really afraid of the burden, there's definitely some, but it's not. I think for most companies they can get away with pretty low spend as far as the getting the campaign up, especially the first one.
Yeah.
And
thanks,
I'll
Michael.
mention along with that is that one of the, and I'm not giving an advertisement, but one of the reasons that I went with Startengine is that they are very entrepreneur friendly, or at least in many ways that others aren't. And they also had a number of programs where they tried something, various things to try to help you be successful. So without going into the details, because I don't know if these programs still exist, but I just found that in addition to the lower funding, lower regulatory burden, Reg C, is that there are a lot of other things you need to get done. And the platform that you use can help you sometimes with some of these things.
Yeah. Thanks, Daniel. And Dave Kunz. So Dave Kunz is actually a GP at a VC fund, and I think you can provide some insights. A very successful one, though. So they are on the other side of yeah. Dave.
So I do sit in an interesting seat where I'm both a VC, I'm a broker dealer, and I've started 4 crowdfunding platforms where I've been an advisor, and I was the CEO of one of them. So I've kind of seen the landscape, and what I will tell you is it always looks more challenging on the other side of the fence. The regulatory environment is, I would say, pretty equal across the board, and I think it should be. The regulators are there to protect the investors, and there needs to be a set of criteria that is put in place to ensure the fact that people fully appreciate and understand what they're investing in. I think there's a place for every funding vehicle, from angel investors to VCs to crowdfunding. And I was just having a call with Frank prior to this call, where I think crowdfunding gets put into and lumped into a category all on its own. And I think there are many different stages and iterations of crowdfunding. And what I mean by that is there's crowdfunding for, a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, where you're putting $5,000 and $10,000 and $25,000 into companies. Generally, it's a reward-based product. There are crowdfunding platforms where you're investing in and actually getting equity back. And to me, those are 2 very, very different products. And you just have to identify for yourself not only what you need today, but what your roadmap is for capitalization as you think about where you want to. VC focuses specifically on startups and early stage growth. I would say that we do invest in very early stage companies, and we've been doing it for 70 years. And we have a return profile of 7.9x return on invested capital. So we've done right by our investors, and we'll continue to do so. So just like you don't want to make blanketed statements about crowdfunding. You don't want to do it about VC either, because there's a point in which VC makes sense.
Sorry.
But I think no, not at all. I'm not taking it personally. I just think that you have to understand the people that you're getting capital from have a job, and that job is based upon the constraints in which they're working within. And as Michael brought up, if you're getting capital from a VC that has a 7 or a 10-year life, you have to understand at some point between that 7 or that 10 years, that VC is going to be looking for an exit. So all I would say is just understand who you're getting your capital from, and know that they all have ulterior motives, whether it's from an individual through a crowdfunding platform, or whether it's from a VC, or whether it's from a family office, or whether it's from an institution. People want their money back. And that money coming back is going to be at different phases and different times. and they're going to be people that are more patient and have a longer period of time and have a longer horizon. And then they're going to be people that are dictated by our mandate. So I would just say, ask those questions, because most people are, if they're asked, will open up and tell you exactly what it is. And I'm happy to give people a list of questions if that's something that they want when they're dealing with VCs. But it is good to understand exactly where you stand with the people who are providing you with capital.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And so that's really the purpose of this mastermind. We brought in startup founders, we brought in investors. We actually have 2 platform operators here. And so really this conversation, also we do have a poll and live Q&A that's going on in the chat. We'd welcome everybody, both attendees, panelists. There's also in the attendees, there are startup founders that are looking to launch their project on a crowdfunding platform or going traditional. And yeah, I'd love for everybody to just interact. But
Can I add
Michael.
something to that, to what
Yep.
David was saying? So you're right. It would be a mistake to paint all VC with the same brush. I'm completely with you. But the statistics in the industry are pretty clear. And I just want to just share a little bit more. I mean, to everybody listening in, if you take money through traditional mechanisms, which is technically the Reg D mechanism, Regulation D, 506C mechanism, which is what VC invests in, or it's 506B rather. If you take money through that mechanism, there's only
It's all the regular offerings. It's just dependent upon how many investors you're looking for.
So anyway, without getting into the minutia, I think it's important to realize that if you take money for that mechanism, not crowdfunding, there's only 3 ways that these investors will get any of their money back, right? So if I'm a VC or I'm an angel or whatever, and I give you $100, there's only 3 mechanisms, 3 scenarios where I will get any money from you at all in any way. One scenario, which is the most common scenario, is you go out of business, and maybe if I invested correctly, I get a big tax write-off, maybe. Scenario number 2 is you sell yourself to a bigger company, and hopefully I make some return, maybe a multiple in my investment, again, hopefully. And number 3 is you go public. The going public thing doesn't really happen anymore. So it really brings us down to 2. And the vast majority of companies go out of business. Now, the reason that the vast majority of companies go out of business, I'm a serial entrepreneur, I've had 4 startups.
And just to clarify, Michael, you're talking about equity, right?
And equity investment, yeah, not alternative like rev share or anything like that, which I know some funds have got into.
Yeah, there's crowdfunding out there. That's the only reason why I bring it.
If you buy stock, yeah, if you buy what the sharks buy on Shark Tank, which is the most common, maybe convertible debt, whatever security you buy, if it's a security, you sell some sort of a security. It could be bonds, could be stocks, could be options, could be warrants, whatever. There's, like I said, there's only 3 mechanisms, and the most popular one is you going out of business as a startup. So at some point, and it also depends on where you are in the fund's life, which you won't necessarily know, it'll become in the VC's best interest to drive your company out of business. And that's something that's really important to realize for everybody. Your interest and the investor's interest diverge really rapidly in some cases. And like I said, I've been in the space myself with my startups, but I also know a lot of others who've had these conflicts. Now with equity crowdfunding, there is something called liquidity, as in the investor can actually sell their shares in a marketplace. And I know we have a representative from Startengine here. They just recently launched their secondary trading platform. There's other platforms out there that also have secondary marketplaces, which makes it much safer for the investor to invest. It gives them kind of a return policy, and it doesn't make them want to drive you out of business.
Shares in any private company today.
Oh, there's plenty being traded on secondary platforms. Net Capital, for example, has, I want to say,
whether you do a Reg D or whether you do a crowdfunding,
the ones that we're talking
you can
about.
trade those secondary shares anywhere.
Startengine has a platform. I think they've onboarded a couple so far.
No,
I know they're trading their own stuff.
You can't trade secondary shares or a Reg D. Is just not accurate.
Reg CFs, the thing that we're talking about.
You said a Reg D offering.
I'm saying if you take money from a VC or an angel, you're taking it under a Regulation D exemption, which you cannot trade. If you take money from the crowd, you're taking it under Regulation CF. Well, there's no secondary marketplaces established. So there's no online platform that you can list your stock. I'm sorry?
There are.
Well, I don't think it's common knowledge for people, and I'm not aware of secondary marketplaces where regular people can buy and sell Regulation D exempt securities.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I am a passive investor in a number of deals, and just the illiquidity, and also you'd be selling at a 50 to 75% discount, if that. And I know that there are family offices that make a business out of this, buying these secondary because you're locked in for it. But just
Hey guys, is it okay if I chime in?
yeah.
Yeah, I just want to first. I want to just talk about Michael and Daniel's very their passionate speech in the very beginning. I'd like to bring it back to that, just because what you guys said is very true. John, what you guys said is very true in regards to the democratization of investments and giving access. That was one of the reasons why I started CrowdChayne. I was a retail broker as well as a banker for around 20 years. So I know both sides of the coin. And I was a part of the first Reg A Plus IPO to list onto the NASDAQ, which was not NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, it was MyOmo. I did a couple of Reg A Plus IPOs afterwards, which were, they were okay, but nothing to the point of like an Airbnb or something like that. And that's really, for me, what opened up my eyes, what was possible with the crowd. So I think that there's this democratization happening. I think that the rise of ICOs and cryptocurrencies had pushed Reg A Plus and Reg CF to the forefront, because now people know they can market and they can be out there in a similar way. And that's what, to me, the real future of this is just democratizing how people can invest into startups. Why is it Y Combinator invested 25 grand in Airbnb and made a historic windfall, right? Why shouldn't any of us have the ability to do that? So I want to acknowledge all you guys for being a part of what I think is a huge movement. I think 2030 we're right now in the overnight success that we're going to have in 2030. It's starting for us now, for some a couple of years ago. So that's part one. Part two, I want to talk a bit about platforms. There are a couple of platforms, actually. There's you know what, I don't know if we can give names on the panel. I don't want to just throw names out there, but there are a couple of platforms that are currently, I think there's two that are, one is actually already active. There's not really liquidity or volume, but it is active, where you can actually trade private securities. There's also one platform that just got their approval in the US for an ATS. Overseas, there's many platforms where you can trade private securities. It's just due to our regulations, unfortunately. And for whatever reason, the regulators, they don't want a platform that's going to list anything that's called a digital security, a crypto, anything of that type. If you look hard enough, you can find them. But I will say, like I will agree with you, Jeffrey. There's no liquidity in those platforms yet. I believe there will be. So I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has and give names out, if you guys allow it. But that's my piece. I just want to kind of bring it back.
Expand a little bit on your background and talk about CrowdChayne real quick, so people understand, your business a little bit as it relates to kind of what we're talking about here.
So CrowdChayne is really kind of the future of my business. So I'll say that off the bat, where I have a broker dealer that I'm in the process of doing. I'm also with a broker dealer currently while we wait. What I do is I raise money for companies in all stages, and I also help companies go public. Michael, I will disagree with you when you said that companies don't go public anymore. There's plenty that go public, and I believe with Reg A, this is going to be the evolution. I know a couple of the call them the godfathers of the Jobs Act, right? These deals are getting done. Big money is getting raised in Reg A from a combination of actually venture capital, institutional, and the retail regular investor. So I see both sides of the coin, because what I do is you guys come to me and I do the due diligence. I make sure that it's something that I can bring to my group of accredited investors. And I just make sure that it's a deal that's passable from the diligence aspect of me. So then the other side is I am the guy that has to go to the venture capital. And so that's not it's not a treat to do that, because the venture capital guys mostly don't like me because I charge money, and they think, well, that money can go farther with the company. So I understand that, but I see where both you and David are coming from, where you could think that VCs aren't necessary. I think in your case, Michael, absolutely, you're clearly versed. you know the game. But I believe that in certain levels, some companies are there. It makes sense for them to get in with the right VC, and the key is the right VC. And I'm not a lover of VCs. I don't think that that every single venture capital fund is should you give your company away at such a huge discount? No, that's what CF is for, so that you can get a better valuation from the crowd and get a better deal as a founder. However, a strategic venture capital relationship makes a heck of a lot of sense if that VC is going to open doors for you. So I don't know if that answered your question, David. But,
if I can say something about that, I think that is an important virtue of venture capital.
Oh, that's
Very
great,
often,
Frank. Thank you.
excuse me? What?
Go for it, Daniel.
Yeah.
No, I wanted to tell Frank I appreciated him telling people a little bit about it. Sorry.
It's okay. I just want to say that one of the things he brought up is a virtue of venture capital, that sometimes you can, they can put together two companies, or help you put together a strategic relationship that you couldn't get otherwise. But I just want to mention is that I had a phone call yesterday with one of my investors who works for, who is an idea man for a very big corporation. And he is suggesting to them how they could use our small wind turbines in one of their data centers. So here's an example of like a regular guy, he probably invested a couple of thousand, who performs that function. And I have several thousand of these people instead of just 5 or 6. So, you can get from both.
And I'll add one thing to what you said. I can almost guarantee you that venture capital is investing in your startups, because finance guys, that's what we do. If something looks good on Startengine, we're probably going to take a flyer and buy some of it. So I think that venture capital is very much involved. You're not seeing it in the same way. And I believe that with the new, with the raise of Reg A going to 75 million, Reg CF is now 5 million, that's going to add to more excitement from the venture world and the PE world to get into the right types of offerings, the right type of deal.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank. And to hear from Startengine themselves, we had Anders. We're big fans of what you're doing there, from one entrepreneur to, others on the panel, and just have seen you over the years, and much deserved success, but would love to share on your side.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much, Ivan and Jeffrey, for inviting me on here, and to the panel. It's not every day that I get to hear from you guys on what, impact, the equity crowdfunding has had for your business, the experience that you've had. Daniel, I love that story. Entrepreneurs are in the business of helping entrepreneurs. If there's ever opportunities for our companies to collaborate, whether you're a drone hardware, company trying to, work with a drone software company, there's a lot of sort of mingling and being intertwined that really helps move the industry forward. I think you guys touched on a lot of really important things during this webinar while I've sort of been sitting here in the audience and then jumping onto the panel. And the biggest ones I want to be is whether there's, liquidity platforms out there on Startengine, or there's other ones in, overseas, or additional ones coming, to the US, it's all for the better of the industry itself. And we're all in the business here of helping entrepreneurs achieve their dreams. I think, as everybody should hopefully be aware of in the audience or on the panel, the Reg CF, SEC rule changes were published this morning. So I can't tell you, how many mornings I've woken up and checked to see if they're actually live. The changes will be coming into effect on March 15th, which is huge. I think it's a real game changer. And one of the questions, I think that would be really valuable for the audience and to hear your guys' feedback, because we have some really successful companies in here with GeoOrbital and Flower Turbines. And I get asked all the time, what is it that you do that makes you successful in equity crowdfunding? And what do I need to watch out for when I put in, however long it takes to get this campaign live, to make sure that I don't just drop and fail? And I think the biggest thing that I tell, entrepreneurs when I'm talking to them prior to even, going on to Startengine, is that success is in your hands. We have a team that's going to support you to be successful, but you have to really want this. You have to be able to overcome adversity. This is all in your blood as founders of businesses. That times are hard, that times are good. And, I always tell entrepreneurs, if you want this to be successful, if you're willing to, listen to our team, adapt to best practices, try things new, pivot when things aren't working well, you can raise the $1 million. And now with the new changes, you can raise the $5 million. So I guess to the panel here, I'd like to ask was there any point in any of your campaigns where you were like, oh man, like this isn't going exactly the way that I started, but I don't want to give up because our raise is live. I do believe in this vision of raising the full $1 million. And what were some of the things that you did with your company to pivot and really, change the direction to make sure that we were moving forward in the right direction?
Well,
Yeah, that's
it's
great.
not exactly an answer exactly the way you asked it, but I would say that it requires faith in what you're doing, because there are a lot of times when I would make a decision, we're going to take a step that's going to expand the business, but it's dependent upon us having a certain amount of money coming in from the funding campaign. And sometimes I would say, let's do it. And sometimes we're down to a couple $100 in the bank account, and then something would happen and, we'd get enough to go on another month, and et cetera, et cetera. And I took a lot of steps like this, and thank God we've really accelerated. People come into our office in Europe, where a lot of our acceleration has been. It's been going faster in Europe than the United States. And they say, I can't believe what you guys have achieved in a little over a year since you started the European company. And part of that is just figuring, well, maybe 1 week is going to be a dry week, but I'm going to keep going.
I love that.
Love that. Michael, you had something to share?
Yeah, I'd love to add to that. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely ups and downs, and it's a roller coaster, but fundamentally raising from the crowd is very different than raising from VC. And David, I don't mean to pick on you. I'm just saying it's a different mode of raising. So with VC, and I know you'll disagree, but let me get through it, and then I'll let you disagree with me. With VC and with angel, like angel group, organized angels, you're raising in this thing called a round, as in you're preparing for months and months and months, and maybe you open up. So you go to this funding buffet basically, and you take in as much money as you can in a couple of months, maybe 3 months, and then you shut down this round. And for a year and a half, you're trying to get to that next inflection point, to that next milestone, and then you open up the buffet again. So what happens is you spend all this time building a factory that allows you to raise money, then you raise the money, and then you shut down the factory. Now, imagine if you sold products that way, right? Like you can only sell products for 3 months out of every 2 years. It's crazy inefficient. The way that the crowd works, and this is the title of my book, is the Evergreen Startup, is because you can go evergreen. You never actually have to shut down. So once you launch the campaign, your raise on a platform, you can have it open pretty much all the time. You have to close it like once a year or when you exceed your certain raise amount. But at $5 million a year, that's good. That's a really good amount. So you don't really need to close it down. So there's no cost to it, right? The entire cost is onboarding, and you're up there, and you can always sell securities like you sell your products throughout the life of your company. And when your valuation changes, or when there's a big inflection point in your business, you close that round down and you open up another one at a different valuation. So it's much more akin to how a public company functions, but you're not a public company. You're still a private company. And I agree with Frank. Yeah, Reg A pluses, I don't consider that IPO stuff. I don't consider that going public. It's a crowdfunding equivalent of public. And that's great. There's a bunch of A pluses going public, if that's what you meant. But as far as IPOs, they're at an all-time low, right? It gives you the tools as a private company to raise kind of like public companies raise. So if you're at the bottom of that roller coaster, you're going to wait until you get to the top. And if you hit the press, if the New York Times writes about how awesome your product is, you can monetize that not only in product sales, but also in security sales. Because that attention, that traditional kind of earned media push, or that paid marketing that you do on Facebook also lets you sell securities. You cannot do that with a VC model. There's nothing that you can do to change that, to get to that inflection point if you're in the middle of a VC raise, because frankly, you're not the one who sets the terms, it's the VC. The venture capital is the one who decides how much you're worth and how much they're going to invest, because there's a really big imbalance of power. The power dynamics in the VC versus the crowd raise are very different. And so you can always stay open. So yeah, we've had really bad weeks. I mean, yes, we've been down to nothing in the bank account. We don't know how we're going to survive. Every company's been that. Tesla has been up in 2 weeks of payroll left, I think Elon said recently at one point. They were going to sell to, I think, Apple or something for like pennies on the dollar. Everybody goes through the roller coaster. But with the crowd, you can always stay open. And that's the deal. You never know who walks through the door.
Michael, what would you say, and just to end on it, because we're coming up on time, like Michael and Daniel, you both had successful raises. What advice or even just insights can you provide to, would-be founders looking to launch on Startengine or any other crowdfunding platform to have a successful raise like the two of you?
So I'll answer this really quickly and I'll pass it on because David has been much more successful than me. I say, if you're relying, for my previous companies, I've relied on VC. The venture capital model and the equity crowdfunding model are directly competitive with each other. There's actually a number of VC funds that say they will not invest in a company that has gone through equity crowdfunding. I know there's some more visionary funds, but the status quo is that these two methods conflict. So if your business model relies on extensive capital later on, and you will need that VC or maybe even PE later on, then I would look really hard on whether crowdfunding is right for you. If you need a few $1,000,000 and then you're gonna hope that the industry changes or that the players evolve and become more tolerant of the crowd, that's a risk you take. So I would just say that it depends on how much money you need, and also how clear your message is. Because with a VC, you have time in front of them to explain. With a crowd, you have a few seconds. So that would be my 2 cents.
And did you use your own design in terms of campaign layout, video, any like messaging that you specifically hit on that touched well with the Startengine community and the backers?
We did. So we came off a really successful Kickstarter campaign. We built a community that way. So we raised, like I said, we raised 1.26 million on Kickstarter. This was in 2016, right when Reg CF was becoming legal. And we were one of the first campaigns. And we basically used a very similar model. Now, it didn't work for our second campaign. We tried to duplicate that, and it didn't work because the industry had evolved. So the equity crowdfunding investor now is, I think, significantly different than the Kickstarter, for example, investor. And yeah, there's a lot more sophisticated people investing through the crowd, like people who would traditionally be angels or LPs even. I was talking to a GP at a pretty large size VC fund, and he's saying that he's losing LPs and family offices because they'd rather go direct. So it's an evolving landscape. So the investor is very sophisticated now, or at least much more so than they were in 2016.
Got it. Awesome. Well, thank you. And Daniel, on success, any insights, advice?
So I think that distinction between crowdfunding and VC at some point is going to change. This year, there's an annual survey by Pepperdine University of the most fundable companies in the United States. They take this year 20 out of 4,500. So we were one of those. I think the last year or the year before, there was another crowdfunded Startengine company also that was one of the 20. And I think that after this continues, I think you're going to see more of this in the future. It's going to become more of a mainstream thing that switches between each. Because if you can show to a group of people who are basically coming there to evaluate you with a VC type of outlook, that you match the criteria that they would have for funding you, and not only that, that you're one of the best in the country for being funded, and you started on a crowdfunding platform, I think at some point there's going to be crossover. I don't see how there can't. People want opportunities. They want the best stuff usually. And at some point, it'll merge, I think.
Daniel, any specific tips on going to market in terms of getting exposure, getting investors? What has worked really well with your project?
So I think you have to show people that are investing in you that you're making progress. I think people that invest in you are willing to say, okay, I realize I'm taking a chance on a young, small company. Let's see if they are making progress. Are they doing something with the money that we've provided them with? So I have been very good about giving updates, saying what's new. And some of the investors have even contacted me and said, we really like the fact that you're giving us a lot of updates. And so I think that process of engaging with them, I noticed that actually maybe 25% of our investments come from people who invested the first time, then they invest again, and then they invest again because they have been following you for a while. They see the progress, they see what you're doing with their money, and they like it. So I think that engagement with your community, it's just like with any other thing, whether it's a public company or a VC, they want to know on a regular basis, what are you doing with their money?
Yeah, you make really
And
good
it's important
points.
to show them.
Yeah, those are really good points. And actually, a lot of projects, that's one of the things that takes a lot of their time. It's just keeping everybody updated. And especially now that we have social media, people are looking more than ever. They'll literally call out project creators because, hey, I haven't got an update in 48 hours. So, it's key to be hyper responsive. But I know there's a lot of great discussions here. We're coming up on time, but we are going to be sending out a private invite to our Slack mastermind. And I know there's some disagreements and discussions going on. Definitely take it over there. Let's solve it. Let's talk about it together. We did 2 polls during this mastermind, and the question was, what is the best marketing channel for investor engagement in 2021? Both panelists and attendees voted tied between influencers, thought leaders, and private investor groups. So it's interesting because on the equity crowdfunding side, kind of like what Daniel said, these investor groups are similar to, what you're creating when you do an equity or a crowdfunding raise. You build these communities that are just super fans behind your project. So, just to that point, yes, absolutely. Those are the 2 for 2021. And thank you, Anders, for kind of highlighting what's coming up, as a platform, and you have your ears to the ground of what's coming up. So just to close things out, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this mastermind. We had a lot of discussions from different parts of the equity crowdfunding ecosystem. And here at Crowdcreate, we really connect, founders to platforms, to thought leaders, even to investors. So we can help you get connected to people just like this on this panel. Definitely send us an email. We'll be sending out, a recorded mastermind after this to all the attendees to share. So if you have any questions, definitely you can reach us at crowdcreate.us, and we'll be sharing all the information of these speakers as well. So thank you everyone for your time, spending Thursday morning, afternoon with us, and have a great week, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.